It has run since mid-July, and this is the third installation out of 4 that you see here. So this has really been an ambitious project. You run a gallery space called Das Esszimmer in Bonn since 2011. And the artists that have been exhibiting here are also artists that you have been exhibiting in your gallery. And you write on the, one interesting piece of information you have on the website is that you don't focus on a specific conceptual direction, rather like focusing on a broad array of artistic positions. That's right. Also interesting is that you're actually a biologist.
Well, also.
Andreas Ribbung, artist also, co-founder of Supermarket, the big independent art fair that we have here in Stockholm, and which is gathering, you probably all know about it. It gathers artisans' initiatives and spaces from all over Europe, all over the world, every year since 2006. It actually become, I mean, it's such an institution that is not really about artist-run initiatives. It reaches out so far and become a network in itself. And to me, it really shows what the artist-run spaces, artist-run initiatives can do. You are also co-founder of the artist-run space Candyland, that was in 2004, among other things. Sorry, we are so many, I had to advance a bit, so I'm going to be a bit short. Sorry, you have to correct me if I come up. I actually have a book here. It's like artist initiatives meetings that you have been the editor for also.
Yeah, I will mention this, and I also brought a few copies.
Good.
For anyone who sees this.
Okay. Next person, Dror Feiler. You are an artist, composer, musician, and you are the co-founder of the Galleri Tegen, together with Gunilla Feiler, which is, if you don't know it, it's just a few blocks up the road, which focus on photography, video, and often with political and societal themes. Sometimes not.
I would like to say we take the art we like.
You take the art we like. Fair enough.
That's fair enough definition,
Yeah.
which kind of mirroring our preference in art and politics and whatever it is. But it don't have to be politics.
It don't have to be.
No.
But in parallel, I have to mention that you're also a well-known activist, involved in social movements, socialist movements of all kinds, and one of the founders of the political movement, Türöffnung. And next, Liv Strand. You are here, you're an artist as well. Everyone here are artists, so I don't have to mention that really. But you are a board member of Künstlerin, and
Nordic Art Association.
Nordic Art Association, yes. Sort of a network association that runs this residence at Malongen, and with a impressive list of partners and members, and that you collaborate with around this and other things. For me, MKF is a little bit of an anonymous organization. I don't know so much about this. It's great that you're here, and I hope to hear more about it. I also stumbled across a nice what you wrote about your own art on the website, and it's that your work aims to put up a space for temporary negotiations. I'm still thinking about what that means, but I hope we'll be able to return to that. Susanna Slöör, that's one. You are an artist, art critic, and co-founder and publisher of the online web magazine OmKonst, which was launched in 2002. And it is focused on art reviews and art critique, mostly written by artists or people connected to the art world. As I understand, it was established as a sort of a reaction against the reviews and the critique that was in the established media at the time. And you have around 15 recurring writers or so that you work with. And it's interesting to also have that perspective here, like artists that are writing and so on. It's not. It used to be very uncommon when I went to art school, for example. So, Per Hasselberg. You are founder of Konstalsea, which is
Public artwork.
a public artwork. We can call it public artwork, we can probably call it a artist, a space of some sort. But it's in Hökarängen, 2004, you're at the moment, you are executive at Konstfrämjandet, which is a well-known, it existed in 1947. It's a nationwide organization that works with art promotion and is with people's movements for art promotion. And it's nationwide, and it has chapters or sections all over the country, and it has an impressive list of members, which can be everything from unions to teacher associations, and you work a lot, as I understand, with educational, promoting art through education and so on. So it's a big organization and quite an impressive work. Andreas Storlien. You're an artist and curator and founder of various gallery spaces and clubs and bands, I would say. I don't know if clubs are the correct that you would use the word.
Not really clubs.
No clubs.
Not really galleries either, but
No,
art
social
spaces.
spaces. Would that be
Art spaces.
art spaces?
Yeah.
Okay. And you have arranged such events and art spaces here in Stockholm, Sekten and Konstattack, and in Brussels under the name of Swallowing Helmets, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Space Zero in. Okay. And you operate as a curating artist in a sense, or with curating as an artistic practice perhaps.
I am an artist and curator.
Artist
so
and curator, but
yeah.
you participate in your own in the exhibitions,
yeah,
the events
yeah.
that you curate,
Yeah.
and work with performance video and so on. I sent a question to you before we started, like last week, something like that, and went like this. What has been the most important development in regards to the self-organized art scene, in your opinion, during the years that you have been active in it from the perspective of your current activities and location of operations? So what has been the most important development in regards to self-organized art scene? Can I start with you, Sabine?
Yes. Well, it's a difficult question, of course, because to nail it down to something. But I think I have to say I haven't done any kind of artist-driven space before I started this was ESSZIMMER in 2011. So, but of course, I mean, as an artist, you always sort of look around and you see what sort of happens. And I think that in the last years, this trying to sort of find each other, let's say, find other artist-driven spaces or initiatives, and sort of exchange things, or that something like this supermarket, like this fair, which is, but it's actually it's something completely different from a usual art fair, or this platform project thing of Artemis, a Greek artist. In essence, where actually we met with IDI and where the starting point of this actually happened. So I think this kind of trying to search each other and find each other and trying to get cooperative projects, that's something which has not been in this artist-driven art scene before, in the 90s or so. I mean, I think on personal level always, but not that you more actively try to get in contact with others you haven't done before.
Real networking on
Yes.
a more like
There also
advanced
now,
level.
in the last, I think, 2 years, 3 years, there also popped up websites, platforms where you can sort of put your space on and sort of see what, sort of getting a map of all the spaces, not only in your country, not only in Europe, but worldwide. So to also see the number and the strength of what's going on, and to be, maybe become more self-conscious of what there is, that sort of.
Yeah, I saw such an initiative. I thought
I mean,
some Swedish Israeli guy. Yeah.
this, yes, yes. But I mean, you're trying similar things.
Yeah.
So
Supermarket created a network in 2010 when we started to meet with other European artist initiatives, and one of the things we were working on was a pilot of a kind of a database where you could make a map of the artist-run spaces. But now we're rather supporting 2 other initiatives. One from the Netherlands called what is it called? It's called
Alternative Art Guide.
Yeah, Alternative Art Guide, and the Artist-Run Alliance, which is Israeli. And yeah. But I was thinking of this question, and I was thinking of Stockholm, and I've been active in this artist-run scene since 15 years. And if I compare what the scene was at that time and today, it was difficult because I changed.
You changed?
But one thing is, I don't know if it's both positive and perhaps also negative. But today you can find like 5 spaces in Stockholm that has been running for like 10, 15 years. And you couldn't see that at the time. And they together, like those 5 spaces, and with there are also other spaces, but they create like 50 opportunities for at least for artists to exhibit, and with group shows, many more. So I think that's a big change since then. And also, I think that it's, for a young artist, it's not necessary to be part of a private commercial gallery's stable. There are other ways to, if you exhibit at artist-run spaces, they can be acquisitions, you can get commissions, you could get exhibitions in smaller, more institutions or so on. So I'll stay there. There are the collaboration in that you mentioned, international collaborations.
Yeah, but that's I share your experience there, I think.
Dror, I think that what Andreas said it's very true, and it's making this so-called alternative gallery world very strong. But of course, there's also the dangers that it's become kind of institution in itself. So we have to work with the idea of not becoming institute ourselves. That's not so easy because. But if I think what was the motivation that we started Galleri in 2006, and I think that it became because we, and me in this case also, were tired of complaining why it is not showing this and why it is not showing that. And we got inspiration from Spike Lee film, Do the Right Thing. If you all remember the pizzeria scene, when the black guy came into the Italian pizzeria in Brooklyn and he said, look on all the photos that are Sofia Loren and all these Robert De Niro Italian stars, and he said, why there are no brothers on the wall? Then the pizzeria owner said to him, open your own pizzeria, and you can have as many brothers and sisters as you wish. So for us, this was a way to have the possibility to put up exhibition of people we think was important to show, things we thought was important for other people to see. This is the positive, and I think there's more and more people who take the initiative to do it. Sometimes because of this, and sometimes because also the possibility to exhibit in the commercial art galleries are not as before. And then if you speak of the negative development, then I would like to say that the cover, the place of art in the newspapers, the reviews, and so on, is less and less. And this make this kind of networking, this kind of social networking, more and more important, because we have not the power to kind of make the newspaper to write, and they are not so eager to write about it, because for them to write about art, it's also their own prestige, it's their own position in a kind of art hierarchy. And I think the important thing is that we have to keep the notion that we are a kind of an alternative. We are another thing. We are not the usual art thing, although we show sometimes even the same artists. But our goal is different. We are not there to make money. We are there to show good art and to share it with the people. And this, I think, the fantastic is that there's more and more galleries and more artists are represented. And I can see that the frequency of visiting is becoming more and more. And this is very positive. I will stop here. I want to speak.
You answered some of the questions I will ask later on.
I'm sure I can answer it again in another way.
Yeah, I would say that during the time that I've been active as an artist, I think this is in Stockholm what happened a lot, that groups of artists gather and they kind of persist on, continue their collaborations or the spaces they open, which of course then counterbalance other parts of the art world. But I also think it's quite funny, which I have to explain something about by an example, that I am the one here for NKF because I'm the latest member of their board and I actually don't know much about it, but I think I got that position in the board because of how I used that space. Because it's open for everybody to apply and to invite somebody traveling here. And there is actually an open call now, and I tried to check, but now it didn't work. But I think it's until the 30th of September. And you cannot apply for abroad, but you can apply from here. So I apply as an artist. And then I invite a fellow artist. I've had one Portuguese colleague coming, and I will have now a Syrian American artist coming. And then we can create seminars for groups of other artists coming, because I'm much more interested in discourse than in actually showing art. So I try to make these spaces also via using the MKF, which is then a flat, and it's a studio room. And there you can gather and do things. You can also invite a broader audience at some moment, but it's also a place to think together. So I use MKF like that, but MKF also collaborate with, I guess, all of you, because institutions in Stockholm, and rather the artist-run one, can invite their artists coming there. But this is kind of what also links an interest of mine, which is how can we get together as artists and actually strengthen the language we use when we talk about art, or strengthen the way to think together, which is not so much about have an artist run space. It's more like how can we co-live as artists, but in a very more precise way.
Okay, the question, what has happened? Well, I have the perspective from 2002 when we started OmKonst, and as you said, it was a reaction towards the press, that we saw the lack of reviews on exhibitions that we were interested in, and so on, and that was, why we started in the first place. We didn't actually thought of ourselves as art critics, more like colleagues, and just have a talk, a collegial talk. But I think the first time we went out to cover an exhibition, nobody was interested in to have a collegial talk. They were interested in reviews. It was whoa. So after a year, we are art critics and artists, and of course we try to recruit artists to become art critics as well, and many of our writers or art critics, they are artists as well. And we try to, I think it's important for artists to comment on exhibitions and other artists' works. To have, it's obviously in literature this is natural, but I think it's more and more important in art really that artists comment on artists. But to say something about the question you put, about what has happened during these years, and if you just see here locally, I think Supermarket, for instance, is a very important initiative. And I think from 2007 and further on, I think the platform of artist-driven spaces have become more manifest. I don't think that's a disadvantage. I think this is very important. And I think there are perhaps new media, social medias and internet has been very helpful to help artists to get together and to really build these networks locally as well as globally. I think that is the very, 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 well, perhaps the reason we are sitting here tonight actually. It's easier for us to get together.
That's interesting. That's of course that's the development that has happened in the last 15 years, and it's a similarity to how political organization is taking place sometimes. But it's interesting that you say, I mean, I think it was a bit of a taboo that artists would write reviews in 15 or 20 years ago. It was like not possible to think. It was like corrupting something. It wasn't about...
It's interesting because in the music in this classical music world, it was always composer writing critique about composers.
Yes, and
it's very funny that in the I think it's to do with the verbal idea that the verbal is kind of having competition with the visual. So artists were not so keen to do that.
But often they're not very good at it either.
In literature, it's the
What do you
same.
say?
Okay, adjunct. Kai?
Yeah, I agree with which been said here, but maybe who's interested in art is what's interests me as a extra step. So in the 80s it was the money who was interested in art, and the market was in the art academy and bought the stuff, and of course that affects the artists. I'm quite late in this, so but you know the 90s and SOS and what they have done, like who's interested in art, if not the market, maybe not the art critics, not the reviews, everyone fell down with this, and we have only ourselves that is interested in art. And I think, like Andreas said, that maybe from these first projects they were quite short. Maybe they took 2 years. Then the money was out and the project was done. So maybe the trend is that now we have learned how to deal with this situation. That is maybe a basic question: what art can do in society, and that. We have different interests in this and different goals, but everyone is really serious that there's no one that is going to pick us up. You have to do it yourself.
And also I note that also the institution have changed, like for example, I remember the Konstnärsnämnden changed their fund, suddenly introduced new funding mechanisms for that are going directly to artist organizations and collaborations that they didn't have before. Around,
Didn't really happen.
What?
It didn't really happen.
It didn't really happen, but anyway, it was like a shift.
But the words on it.
But anyways, obviously to me that because of all these spaces are persisting and sort of establishing themselves in their own right and not just blowing out after 2 years, it's also means that there are some big shifts in the system in a sense, also when it comes to funding as well. But I leave it there, Mercedes, from your point of view.
Yeah, I think there is a lot more performance being shown in artist-run spaces than before, and I also think there is a bigger awareness about how Western Europe and the US have kind of like dominated the canon of art, and you see this a lot. And I think that in artist-run initiatives and spaces, there is often a much bigger diversity than when you look at the commercial art world. Not many more artists who have, for example, not been born in Sweden and so on. And also one thing which I think is very interesting, like for example, when I curate exhibitions, I always try to also publish booklets or catalogs with texts and images by the artists, and this is also a way of kind of self-historicizing, saying that we exist outside of the commercial art world or as an alternative to that, and we're also like self-empowering and self-historicizing, and I think it's super important.
If you think about the motivation, why you started a museum for 200 years ago, it was not for the state to make money. The state gave the money to show, to be proud about the art. This is what we do now. Not the state, but about the art, about the artists.
I said another. Sorry, Lee.
Yeah, I would also say that it has to do with this larger diversity of what's being shown, who is showing, and what kind of direction different artists are engaging in. I mean, it's much broader, so it's just not as simple to keep top of anything, because it's so many different things going on, and that's the nice thing about the contemporary art scene, I would say.
You had also in the Konstfrämjandet on the website says, I mean, for your organization, you are very awarely and purposefully working with art in society, as I understand, with the art as an educational tool, and presuming that art has a place in society with the citizens. That is sort of another perspective in a sense. How do you see that?
Yeah, the mission is, like you said, 70 years, but and it's really simple art for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like a big issue. But then you have to define like anyone and art and all that. But I think that if you see art as artistic thinking, maybe you can. It's easy to see that it's a human capacity that maybe we train a lot, but that everyone can use. And then you have like to test that, to try to develop that. So it's like a educational organization. But our members, those 5.5 million people's organization that is owning us, that started us, we have to convince them. They think, of course, of art that is avant-garde, that is really hard and all that. That is nothing for them. So we have to convince them in another way to think about art. So to try art in different situations. It's really a funny job.
But does it work out? I mean, do you manage?
And of course I was interested in this before, so it's not about my job. I happen to end up there in this. But it's this question, art's role in society. If you back off, you see that if you're avant-garde, if you don't say that you're a citizen as anyone else, and you have certain rights, maybe it's more effective to see artistry as an expanded role of the citizen. Like you're really doing the citizen's role. You are critical thinking. You are doing all the things that are supposed to be in a democratic citizen's mind, like behaving.
It's almost like a role model.
So yeah, and in a lot of I'm reading this Konstnärsutredningen right now, and they say that the artist has many times goes beyond, like the artist is the test model for the citizen in some kind. But yeah, the proposal is if they mean that, maybe they can use the artist as a role model. And, for instance, propose medborgarlön for artists, like to solve some of the problems. But instead, the proposal is really spending 100 million in a state project for digitalization or something.
Yeah, I know. That's a discussion of it.
Yeah, we can discuss that.
We can discuss that later. I would, Andreas.
Yeah, I was thinking of there is also a force in the art market to make art very exclusive, and because if you have a commercial gallery, you rather have customers who buy the art for high prices. And for the artist, it's a question of life and death to actually get a broader interest in art. And this also has to do with the reviews